शुक्लां भरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। अगजानन पद्मार्कं गजाननमहर्निशम् अनेकदन्तं भक्तानाम् एकदन्तमुपास्महे। श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां श्रीहयग्रीवमुपास्महे। श्रीहयग्रीवमूर्तये नमः। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। श्रीमहासरस्वत्यै नमः। उमाकोमलहस्ताब्जसम्भावितललाटकं हिरण्यकुण्डलं वन्दे कुमारं पुष्करश्रजं। வெற்றிவேல் முருகனுக்கு ஹரஹரோஹரா. லோகவீரியம் மகாபூஜ்யம் சர்வரக்ஷாகரம் விபும் பார்வதி ஹிருதயானந்தம் சாஸ்தாரம் பிரணமாம்யகம். சுவாமியே சரணமையப்பா. வாகர்த்தாவிவ சம்பிரக்தௌ வாகர்த்த பிரதிபத்தயே ஜகதः பிதரौ வந்தே பார்வதி பரமேஸ்வரौ. ஸ்ரீ பார்வதி பரமேஸ்வராभ्यां நமः. कोमलं कूजयन् वेणुं श्यामलोऽयं कुमारकः वेदवेद्यं परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। पीताम्बरं करविराजितचक्रशङ्खकौमोदकी सरसिजं करुणासमुद्रं राधासहायम् अतिसुन्दरमन्दहासं वातालयेशम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। कृष्णो रक्षतु मां चराचरगुरुः कृष्णं नमस्ये सदा। कृष्णेनैव सुरक्षितोऽहमसकृत् कृष्णाय दत्तं मनः। कृष्णादेव समुद्भवो मम विभो कृष्णस्य दासोऽस्म्यहं। कृष्णे भक्तिरचञ्चलास्तु भगवन् हे कृष्ण तुभ्यं नमः। श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं नम्राणां सन्निधत्ते सततमपि पुरस्तैर्नभ्यर्थितानपि आर्तान् कामानजस्रं वितरति परमानन्दसान्द्रां गतिं च। इत्थं निःशेषलभ्यो निरवधिकफलः पारिजातो हरे त्वं क्षुद्रं तं शक्रवाटी द्रुममभिलषति व्यर्थमर्त्यव्रजोऽह्यं। श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं श्रीभट्टपादम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। वंशीविभूषितकरात् नवनीरदाभात् पीताम्बरात् अरुणबिम्बफलादरोष्टात् पूर्णेन्दुसुन्दरमुखात् अरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने। കൈരണ്ടും കൂപ്പി ഞാൻ വീണ്ടുമീറക്കുന്നു നീരാജലോചന നിന്നോടായി. ഏതീനു മഞ്ഞനെ കുമ്പിടേണ്ട തോറും പ്രീതിയിൽ നീ എന്നെ പാലിക്കെന്നായി. കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ. Good evening, everyone. Someone is logged in as clinical coordinator. I don't know who that is. Deepa or Radha. Yeah. So who wants to do 86 today? Or two of you can do it, whoever wants to half. No volunteers.
நான் ட்ரை பண்றேன் ராஜேஷ்.
Sure.
शाल्वादिवदवर्णनं भारतयुक्तं च वर्णनं युक्तं वर्णनं च साल्वो विवाहे यदुपलविजितः चन्द्रचूडात् विमानं विन्तन् सौभं समायी त्वयि वसति कुरुं त्वत्पुरीम् अभ्यपाङ्क्षित् प्रत्युम्नस्तं निरुन्तन् निखिल यदुपडैः निग्रहीतुम् उग्रवीर्यं तस्यामात्यं द्युमन्तं व्यजनिच समरसप्तविंशत्यहान्तः तावत्त्वं रामशाली त्वरितम् उपगतः कण्ठितप्रायसैन्यं सौभेशं तं नियरुन्ताः स च किल कदया शार्ङ्गम् शयते माया तातं व्यहिंसीतभिदव पुरतः तत्त्वयापि क्षणार्तं नान्या इत्याहुरेके तदितम् अवमतं व्यास एवं यशेतीत् क्षिप्त्वा सौभं कदा चूर्णितम् उदगनितौ मंशु साल्वेऽपि चक्रेणोत्कृते तन्दवक्त्रः प्रसभम् अभिपदन्नप्यमुञ्चत्कदां ते कौमोदक्या हतो सावपि सुकृत निधिश्चैत्य वत्प्रापतैक्यं सर्वेषामेष पूर्वं त्वयि धृतमनसां मोक्षणार्थोऽवतारः वैयायाधीतजाते किल कुरु सदसि युदके संयतायाः क्रन्थन् याज्ञसेन्याः सकरुणम् अकृदा श्लीलमालाम् अनन्ताम् अन्नान्त प्राप्त सर्वां स च मुनिश्चकित द्रौपदी चिन्तितोत प्राप्त
Did we lose her?
Recording in progress.
I think we lost her. Okay. Vijay, did we lose you?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Prapta Shakan. One second. Somebody is like, sorry. Prapta Shakan Paschan Muniganam Akruta Strupati Mantam Vanante.
Akritaha. There's a visarga there.
Okay. Akritaha Triptimantam Vanante Yuttotyoke Mantre Milati Sati Vridaf Palgunena Tvamegah Kauravye Tatta Naishyah Karipura Tatta Shainyah Karipura Magamo Dautyakrut Pandavartam भीष्मद्रोणादिमान्ये तव खलु वचने धिक्कृते कौरवेण व्यावृण्वन् विश्वरूपं मुनिशतसि पुरीं शोभयित्वा गशोपुः
Gato bhuhu. Gato bhuhu. Last word. Shobhayitva gato bhuhu.
इत्वा कदो भूः
Yeah, you can
जिष्णु
stop here, Vijay. Good. Very good.
Okay.
Radha, you are there. You want to do the remaining 5, 6? Other ke Lanigan or Rupa?
Hello.
Yeah.
அது எனக்கு என்னோட இன்டர்நெட் அது சரியா இல்லை அதனால that's why it's on and off, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, you want to try? You want to do the remaining 6?
Which one? ஏது வாசிக்கிறது இப்போ?
86.
86. One second.
From the 6th stanza.
Which one did you want?
From the 6th one. Jishnosthvam Krishna Sutaha. 86th, the 6th stanza.
जिष्णोस्त्वं कृष्णसूतः खलु समरमुखे बन्धुखादे दयालुं खिन्नं तं वीक्ष्य वीरं किमिदमयि सखे नित्य एकोऽयमात्मा को वद्यः कोऽत्र हन्ता तदिह वदभियं प्रोज्यमय्यर्पितात्मा धर्म्यं युद्धं चरेति प्रकृतिमनयता दर्शयन् विश्वरूपम् भक्तोत्तं सेध भीष्मे तव कृत्यैकसक्ते नित्यं विभिन्दत्ययुत समधिकं प्राप्त साधे च पार्थे निःशस्त्रत्व प्रतिज्ञां विजहदरि वरं धारयन् क्रोधशाली वाधावन् प्राञ्जलिं तं नतशिरसमधो वीक्ष्य मोदादपागाः युद्धे द्रोणस्य हस्तिस्थिररणबगदत्तेरितं वैष्णवास्त्रं वक्षस्याधत्त चक्रस्थगितरविमहाः प्रार्थयत् सिन्धुराजं नागास्त्रे कर्णमुक्ते क्षितिमवनमयन् केवलं कृत्तमौलिं तत्रापि पार्थं किमिव न हि भवान् पाण्डवानामकाशीत् युद्धादौ तीर्थगामी स खलु हलधरो नैमिषक्षेत्रमृच्छन् अप्रत्युत्थायि सूदक्षयकृदध सुतं तत्पदे कल्पयित्वा यज्ञघ्नं बल्बलं पर्वणि परिदलयन् स्नाततीर्थोरणान्दे सम्प्राप्तो भीमदुर्योधनरणमशमं वीक्ष्य यादव पुरीं ते संसुप्त द्रौपदेय क्षपणहदधियं द्रौणीमेत्यत्वदुक्त्या तन्मुक्तं ब्राह्ममस्त्रं समहृद विजयो मौलिरत्नं च जह्रे उच्छित्यै पाण्डवानां पुनरपि च विशत्युत्तरा गर्भमस्त्रे रक्षन्नङ्गुष्टमात्रः किल जठरमगाः चक्रपाणिर्विभो त्वं धर्मौघं धर्म सुनोरभिददखिलं छन्दमृत्युः स भीष्मः त्वां पश्यन् भक्तिभूम्नैव हि सपति ययौ निष्कलब्रह्मभूयम् संयाजाधाश्वमेतैस्त्रिभिरतिमहितैर्धर्मजं पूर्णकामं सम्प्राप्तो द्वारकां त्वं पवनपुरपते पाहि मां सर्वरोगात् सर्वत्र गोविन्दनाम संकीर्तनं गोविन्द गोविन्द.
Very good. Okay, so let's continue with 89. So Prabha, you can be a student, and Lavanya, you can be a student first half. So 89 is two charitrams in there. One is Vrikasura Vada Varnanam, and the next one is Bhrigu Maharshi's Charitram. That story comes there. So as you all know, 88 last stanza was the end of the Krishna avatar. So that kind of came to an end. So now we generally go into the rest of the stuff towards the end, right? So stanza 1. Rama janhe yadi tava bhakteshu vibhavo na sadhya sampadhya stadiha madakritva dashaminam prashantim kritvaiva pradishasi tatah kamamakilam prashanteshu kshipram nakhalu bhavadiye chutikata. So, we all have this feeling, right, that I'm doing all these prayers, I'm going and asking for a lot of things, right? You pray asking for some things, and then you don't get it. And then you wonder, what, I'm praying, but I'm not getting any of these benefits. What is the purpose of these prayers, right? So we are not alone, because everybody has been thinking like that for a long time. And even Parikshit also thought about that. So he was saying that, hey, I've heard, this is how he asked Shukra Brahman the question. He says, I've heard that, that people who pray to Narayana and Hari, they always lose things. They are not getting things, right? And he says there's a little bit of a paradox here, because he says Narayana Hari, who is supposed to be the supreme Lord, supreme Brahman, but every time when we pray, we don't get anything in return, right, for the materialistic things. However, when you think of Shiva, who is supposed to be an ascetic, who's supposed to be wearing tiger cloth, who's, living amongst, in the Shamshan, who has absolutely nothing, who looks like a very poor person, but you pray to Shiva, you get everything you want, right? He says that seems like a paradox. Well, Narayana, who's married to Mahalakshmi, who's Shri's husband, he is, prosperity, but you pray to Narayana, nothing happens, right? So he's saying this seems like a paradox, right? Why is that the case? That's the question that Shukra Brahman actually asks. Sorry, Parikshit asks Shukra Brahman. So the explanation, and Bhattacharya also is adding to that. So the explanation that is given, he says that, look, in Lord Shiva's case, Shiva is an Ashutoshi. We already said that, right? One who's very quickly pleased. And in Shiva's case, the way it is associated is there are different forms of lingams of Shiva which you can worship for different material benefits, right? You can worship one form for getting wealth, and the Chamakam, for those of you who know Rudram, is nothing but you say the Namaha, you pray initially, and then there's a non-stop set of things you can actually ask, right, to Lord Shiva. And then you say, please grant me all of these things, right? So you don't have to even think about what to ask. They've already given you a set of things you can ask, which covers everything, right? So it says for Shiva, that is how it is. You ask and then you'll immediately get it. But he says, but for Vishnu or Narayana, it says is you will not get anything that is materialistic when you ask Narayana. The only thing you can ask Narayana which you will get is supreme knowledge or complete liberation. Anything else you ask, you're definitely not going to get it. So even Shukra Brahman says, don't waste your time praying to Narayana if you actually want these materialistic things, right? And I'm going to say a little bit of the thing from the second stanza also is, Krishna also gives this message, right? He says that people who have a lot of things, who have wealth, I'm never amongst them. He says, if they have to really fall in love with me, I first deprive them completely of their prosperity. When I deprive them of their prosperity, and this doesn't mean wealth, it could be anything, right? Deprive them of whatever they have. So when that happens, what happens is they start now, when you suddenly lose everything, the people who are surrounding you also start disassociating themselves with you. So now you also lose your one circle of close relatives and friends. And then you reach a point where you have absolutely nothing and you just want to pray to the Lord. So when you reach that point, when you don't want anything, when you reach that point and then you pray, says that's when Narayana Krishna says, I will come and give you my blessings. At that time, when I know you don't want anything else, till the point I realize that you don't want anything else, I'm not going to come and help you out. Right? So that is the logic even Krishna gives. And even Bhattaripad also says the same thing here, because he says, if I give you prosperity, there is nobody in this world who doesn't have pride the moment you become prosperous. So the moment you get pride, then you become dispassionate towards other religious things. And so the only way for you to become truly dedicated and religious, to remove the pride, which means to remove the prosperity out. So that is a logic he actually gives here. So he says, but people who want complete liberation, who don't want anything. And that's why if you look at all the examples we saw even in Narayaneeyam of people who prayed to Krishna or Narayana, for that matter, they did not ask for more money or power. They always said, I want you as my child because I want to be like you. That is one thing. Or there are people like the Prachetas who worship for 10,000 years and say, I don't want anything, I only want your blessings. Right? That's what everybody comes and asking. So that is how he's starting, because he's going to give some examples in the second stanza about what happens, right? Anyway, so Rama jane yadiha tava bhakteshu vibhavo, comma, na sadyas sampadyas tadiha mada kritvad ashaminam. If you want to break it, kritvad ashaminam prashantim kritvaiva pradishasi tataha, put a tatah kamam akhilam, comma, prashanteshu kshipram na khalu bhavadiye chutikata. Rama janhe yadi tava bhakteshu vibhavo na sadyas sampadyas tadiha madakritva dashaminam prashantim kritvaiva pradishasi tatah kamam akhilam prashanteshu kshipram na khalu bhavadiye chutikata.
रमा जाने यदिह तव भक्तेषु विभवो न सद्यः सम्पद्यस्तदिह मदकृत्वा दशमिनां प्रशान्तिं कृत्वैव प्रदिशसि ततः काममखिलं प्रशान्तेषु क्षिप्रं न खलु भवदीयाच्युक्तिकता भवदीये च्युक्तिकता रमा जाने यदिह तव भक्तेषु विभवो न सद्यः सम्पद्यस्तदिह मदकृत्वा दशमिनां प्रशान्तिं कृत्वैव प्रदिशसि ततः काममखिलं प्रशान्तेषु क्षिप्रं न खलु भवदीयेच्युक्तिकता
रमा जाने यदिह तव भक्तेषु विभवो न सद्यः सम्पद्यः तदिह मदकृत्वा दशमिमां प्रशान्तिं कृत्वैव प्रदिशसि ततः काममखिलं प्रशान्तेषु क्षिप्रं न खलु भवदीये च्युक्तिः कथा रमा जाने यदिह तव भक्तेषु विभवो न सद्यः सम्पद्यः तदिह मदकृत्वा दशमिमां मदकृत्वा दशमिनां प्रशान्तिं कृत्वैव प्रदिशसि ततः कामम् अखिलम् प्रशान्तेषु क्षिप्रं न खलु भवदीये च्युक्तिः कथा.
This tune changes. Sadyah prasadarushitan vidishankaradhin kenchit vibho nicha gunanugunam bhajantah drashta bhavanti bata kashtamadhirgha drishtya spashtam vrikasura udaharanam kilasmin. So like we said, so everybody, when you think of Ravana, you think of Hiranyakashipu. We saw the Bana story. and Jayadratha, which comes in the 86, which I need to send you all the meaning, which I haven't. But anyway, all of these people, they always pray first to Brahma or Shiva because they know they can get any boon they want. Because they can be very quickly pleased, relatively quickly pleased. Not like you can pray overnight and you'll get it, right? And we're going to see some examples of what these people did, right? The amount of prayers they have to do to even get that blessings, but they're relatively easy to please, right? So, but with all of these cases, what happens is they're quickly pleased, they get what they want, but then it always ends up kind of boomeranging back, right? It comes up hurting them. So in Ravana's example, Ravana got so much power and strength that he tried to lift Kailasha mountain when Shiva and Parvati were seated there, right? So that's what it ended up. He ended up turning back on it. And Hiranyakashipu also, we know when he got all those blessings from Brahma, he ended up trying to do bad things. So some of these people get the power and they end up misusing it. And he's going to give one example. And he says to prove this example of Vrikasura is a classic example that is actually given. That's how the story starts. So here he says, I'm going to give you an example of what happens with Vrikasura. So Sadhyaha, put a F, Sadhyah Prasada Rushitan Vidhi Shankaradin, Kechit Vibho Nija Gunanu Gunam Bhajantaha Bhrashta Bhavanti Bata Kashtam Adhirga. You can break that. Kashtam Adhirga Drishtya, Spashtam Vrikasura Udaharanam Kilasmin. Sadhyah Prasada Rushitan Vidhi Shankaradin Kechit Vibho Nija Gunanu Gunam Bhajantah Bhrashta Bhavanti Bata Kashtamadhirga Drishtya Spashtam Vrikasura Udaharanam Kilasmin.
Sadyah prasada rushitan vidishankaradin kechid vibo nijaguna nugunam bhajantah Bhrashta bhavanti bata kashtamadhirgha drishtya spashtam vrikasura udaharanam kilasmin. Sadyah prasada rushitan vidishankaradin kechid vibo nijagunanugunam bhajantah Bhrashta bhavanti bata kashtamadhirgha drishtya Spashtam vrikasura udaharanam kilasmin.
Sadyah prasada rushitan vidishankaradin kechit vibho nijagunanugunam bhajantah Bhrashta bhavanti bata kashtam adhirga drishtya spashtam vrikasura udaharanam kilasmin. Sadyah prasada rushitan vidishankaradin kechit vibho nijagunanugunam bhajantah Bhrashta bhavanti bata kashtam adhirga drishtya Spashtam vrikasura udaharanam kilasmin.
Stanza 3. This also the tune changes. First to 4 stanzas, every stanza is a different tune. Slightly different chandas only in this. Shakunija satu naradame kadham tvarita tosham aprichadadishwaram sachadidesha girisham upasitum natu bhavantam abandhum asadhushu. So this is a story of Vrikasura which is getting said here. So there was this asura called Vrikasura who says is the son of Shakuni, not the Shakuni who came in Mahabharata. There was another Shakuni who was there, which is a very, very famous person. So his son, Vrikasura. So this Vrikasura has been, he's also a very evil person, but he's been wanting to get more power and strength. So he wonders who should I go and do meditation on or do tapas for. So he wanders around, he meets Narada and he goes and asks, who should I pray so I get the boon I want? So Narada says, it's very obvious. The simplest person to please is Lord Shiva. You should go pray to Shiva because, and Narada gives him example of, Bana and others who have actually done these prayers and say, you go pray to Lord Shiva, you'll get whatever you want. So the Vrikasura then decides to go and pray to Lord Shiva. Shakunijaha, put a is, Shakunijas, Satu Naradam Ekada, Tvarita Tosham, so that ma that is there, put a im, then a, Tosham Aprichat Adishwaram. It will be easier to say it that way. Tosham Aprichat Adishwaram, Sacha Didesha Girisham Upasitum, Natu Bhavantam Abandhum asadushu, short u. शकुनिजः स तु नारदमेकधा त्वरिततोषमपृच्छदधीश्वरम् स च दिदेश गिरीशमुपासितुम् न तु बभन्तमबन्धुमसाधुषु.
शकुनिजः स तु नारदम् एकदा त्वरिततोषमपरिच्छद् अधीश्वरम्.
अपृच्छत्, sorry, तोषम्
अपृच्छद्.
अपृच्छत्.
Okay. त्वरिततोषमपृच्छदधीश्वरम् स च दिदेश गिरीशमुपासितुम् न तु भवन्तमबन्धुमसाधुषु. शकुनिजः स तु नारदमेकदा त्वरिततोषमपृच्छद् अधीश्वरम् स च दिदेश गिरीशमुपासितुम् न तु भवन्तमबन्धुमसाधुषु.
शकुनिजः स तु नारदमेकदा त्वरिततोषमपृच्छद् अधीश्वरम् स च दिदेश गिरीशमुपासितुम् न तु भवन्तमबन्धुमसाधुषु. शकुनिजः स तु नारदमेकदा त्वरिततोषमपृच्छद् अधीश्वरम् स च दिदेश गिरीशमुपासितुम् न तु भवन्तमबन्धुमसाधुषु.
Stanza 4. So from 4 to the rest, I think, or actually next to 3 stanzas is a different tune. तपस्तत्त्वा घोरं स खलु कुपितः सप्तमदिने शिरश्छित्त्वा सद्यः पुरहरमुपस्थाप्य पुरतः अतिक्षुद्रं रौद्रं शिरसि करदानेन निधनं जगन्नाथाद्वव्रे भवति विमुखानां क्व शुभतीः. So this Brikasura now goes to Kedarnath and then he starts doing tapas. So he starts doing intense tapas, and the prayers he does is, when he's doing this homam, he considers the homam to be the mouth of Lord Shiva, and then as a sacrifice, when she does every day, he offers his own flesh, he cuts his own flesh and offers this as a sacrifice to Shiva. So that is the amount of meditation or prayers and homam he actually does. So he does this for 7 days, but still Lord Shiva does not come in front of him. So then on the 7th day, he decides this is the end. So what he does is he takes bath, and then he decides to chop his head and offer his head as a sacrifice to Lord Shiva. When he's about to do that, then from the fire, Lord Shiva himself comes out and says, holds his hands, he says, I'm really pleased. He says, I am very easily pleased. Like you all know, Eka Bilvam Samarpanam. You just have to submit one Bilva with devotion. I'll be pleased. You've done this intense prayers for 7 days. What boon do you need? So as Brikasura says, I want to become so powerful that whosoever head I touch, my hand touches, that person should burn to ashes. That's the boon I actually want. So Shiva listens to this, and such a ghoram boon this person is asking, but he's already promised that I'm going to give you whatever boon you want. So he says, okay, so be it, right? And Shiva then grants him that boon. Tapas tattva ghoram sakhalu kupitaha, putta is kupitas saptamadine, comma, shiraha, putta ish, shirash chitva sadhyaha, putta f, sadhyaf, puraharam upasthapya purataha. You can break that. Atikshudram raudram shirasi karadanena nidhanam, comma, jagannathat vavre bhavati vimukhanam kva shubhadhihi. Tapastatva ghoram sakhalu kupitas saptamadine shiraschitva sadyah puraharam upasthapya puratah atikshudram raudram shirasi karadanena nidhanam jagannathat vavre bhavati vimukhanam kva shubhadhihi.
तपस्तप्त्वा घोरं स खलु कुपितः सप्तमदने शिरः छित्त्वा सद्यः पुरहरम् उपसत्याप्य पुरतः अतिक्षुद्रं रुद्रं शिरसि करदानेन निधनं जगन्नाथद्वारे भवति विमुखानां क्व शुभदीः.
The third line la atik shudram raudram. Okay, not written. And then the fourth line, first word, Jagannatad Vavre.
Dvavre.
No, Jagannath. It's easy to break it as Jagannatad Vavre.
Jagannatha Dvavre.
Yeah, it Jagannatad Vavre. B as in Victor. Vavre.
Jagannatha Dvavre. Okay. तपस्तप्त्वा घोरं स खलु कुपितः सप्तमदिने शिरः चित्वा सद्यः पुरहरम् उपस्थाप्य पुरतः अतिक्षुद्रं रौद्रं शिरसि करदानेन निधनं जगन्नाथाद्वव्रे भवति विमुखानां क्वशुबधीः. Sorry, tune with.
That's it.
तपस्तप्त्वा घोरं स खलु कुपितः सप्तमदिने शिरः चित्वा सद्यः पुरहरम् उपस्थाप्य पुरतः अतिक्षुद्रं रौद्रं शिरसि करदानेन निधनं जगन्नाथाद्वरे भवति विमुखानां क्वशुबधीः.
Lavanya, the fourth line, first word, Jagannathat Vavre.
जगन्नाथाद्वव्रे.
Yeah.
Okay. तपस्तप्त्वा घोरं स खलु कुपितः सप्तमदिने शिरः चित्वा सद्यः पुरहरम् उपस्थाप्य पुरतः अतिक्षुद्रं रौद्रं शिरसि करदानेन निधनं जगन्नाथाद्वव्रे भवति विमुखानां क्वशुबधीः.
Yeah, I think second line, I don't know, you joined the second and third together, but that's okay. Stanza 5. Moktaram bandhamukto harinapatiriva pradravat sotarudram daityad bhityasmadevo dishi dishi valate prishtato datta drishtihi tushnike sarvaloke tava padamadi rokshantamudvikshya sharvam durat evagratasthvam patuvatu vapushatastishe danavahya. So when you go to the circus or someplace, right, where there's a lion in a cage, now you feed the lion, it's in control when it's inside the cage. The moment you release the cage, the lion is going to come out to attack you. That's what Vrikasura does. So the moment Shiva gives him that blessing, the first person he wants to try it out is on Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is standing in front of him. So he decides to come forward, rushes towards Lord Shiva to then place, Vrikasura tries to place his hand on Lord Shiva. So unfortunately, Shiva cannot take back that boon, right? So, and he is not put any restrictions or constraints on that. So what Shiva does is he ends up suddenly disappearing from that place. And then he goes to this, like we said, this Karana Vaikuntham, which is a portion of the Vaikuntham, which is accessible within the Brahmanda. So he goes there, so where Lord Narayana is there, and he approaches that place. So when he's coming there, so Narayana Hari realizes what the problem is. And then in the form of a Brahmachari, so Narayana takes the form of a brahmachari and then decides to stop in the, or no, comes in the way of Vrikasura. Moktaram bandha mukto, harina patiriva pradravat sota rudram, daityat bhitya smadevo, dishi dishi valate prishthato datta drishtihi. Moktaram bandhamukto harinapatiriva pradravat sotarudram daityad bhityasmadevo dishi dishi valate prishthato datta drishtihi.
Moktaram bandhamukto harinapatiriva pradravat sotarudram daityad bhityasmadevo dishi dishi valate prishtato datta drishtihi. Moktaram bandhamukto harinapatiriva pradravat sotarudram daityad bhityasmadevo dishi dishi valate prishtato datta drishtihi.
Moktaram bandhamukto harinapatiriva प्राद्रवस्त्रोतरुद्रम् दैत्याद्भीत्या स्म देवो दिशि दिशि वलते पृष्ठतो दत्तदृष्टिः.
Lavanya, the first line, Bhandha Mukto, adukapram there's a pause.
Okay. मोक्तारं बन्धमुक्तो हरिणपतिरिव प्राद्रवस्त्रोतरुद्रम् दैत्याद्भीतय स्म देवो दिशि दिशि वलते पृष्ठतो दत्तदृष्टिः.
Tushnike sarvaloke, comma, tava padamadi rokshyantam, you can break it that ma, rokshyantam udvikshya sharvam, comma, durad evagra tastvam, comma, patu vatu vapusha tastishe danavaya. Tushnike sarvaloke tava padamadi rokshyantamudvikshya sharvam दूरादेवाग्रतस्त्वं पटुवटु वपुषा तस्थिषे दानवाय.
तूष्णीके सर्वलोके तव पदम अधिरोक्ष्यन्तम् उद्वीक्ष्य शर्वं दूराद् एवाग्रतस्त्वं पटुवटु वपुषा तस्तिषे दानवाय. तूष्णीके सर्वलोके तव पदम् अधिरोक्ष्यन्तम् उद्वीक्ष्य शर्वं दूराद् एवाग्रतस्त्वं पटुवटु वपुषा तस्तिषे दानवाय.
तूष्णीके सर्वलोके तव पदम् अधिरोक्ष्यन्तम् उद्वीक्ष्य सर्वं दूरादेवाग्रतस्त्वं पटुवटु वपुषा तष्टिते दानवाय. तस्तिषे.
Yeah.
Okay. तूष्णीके सर्वलोके तव पदमधिरोक्ष्यन्तम् उद्वीक्ष्य शर्वं दूराद् एवाग्रतस्त्वं पटुवटु वपुषा तस्तिषे दानवाय.
Stanza 6. Bhadram te shakuneya भ्रमसि किमधुना त्वं पिशाचस्य वाचा सन्देहश्चेन्मदुक्तौ तव किमु न करोष्यङ्गुलीमङ्गमौलौ इत्थं त्वद्वाक्यमूढः शिरसि कृतकरः सोपतच्छिन्नपातं भ्रंशो ह्येवं परोपासितुरपि च गतिः शूलिनोऽपि त्वमेव. So, like we saw in the in Vamana Avataram also, when Lord came in form of Vamana as a Brahmin boy, like it lit up that entire place. The people thought the sun god himself has come, because that was the amount of tejas that was actually there when he came. Similarly, the Lord is now standing with full tejas and is shining brightly in front of this Vrikasura who's coming there. And when Vrikasura approaches the Lord, so he proactively goes and talks to the Vrikasura, saying, you know what, you seem very tired, right? And looks like you are in the lookout for something. And he says, sometimes when you're very tired and your mind is distracted, right, you may not be able to think. So why don't you calm down, rest? Is there something I can actually help you with, right? He gives him that. Narayana is telling this to Vrikasura. So when he says this Vrikasura is also impressed with this small brahmachari who has actually come. And then, he says, he narrates the story about how he's actually gotten this boon from Lord Shiva. And then he doesn't trust Lord Shiva. So he said, I'm the lookout for Lord Shiva and I'm not able to find him. So at this time, this brahmachari, this boy says, what you're saying is true, because this Lord Shiva cannot be trusted, because he says, this is Pishachasya Vacha. This Shiva is the one who roams around with this ghosts in the evening and the goblins. He goes to the crematorium. Why would you trust somebody like that? This person like this cannot be trusted, right? He hangs out with Bhuta Ganas, all that he says. So you're right, he cannot be trusted. In fact, I have a feeling what he says is wrong, and if it is wrong, you should duly go punish that Lord Shiva, so he learns his lesson. So somehow he tricks him and says, the best way, why don't you keep it on your head and see, right? And whether it works or not. And somehow this moodaha, that's why although his Vrikasura is such a great asura, is so powerful, sometimes you are caught in your own pride that you don't know what you're doing. So he being a Mudaha in this case, he ends up putting his own hand on his head, and then he ends up getting burnt into ashes. So this is the second time this happens, because if you remember, the Mohini Avataram also the same thing happens, right? Narayana comes as Mohini, and then there's a dance that happens where he places his hand, and then the Bhasmasura does the same thing. That's a different story. This is a different story. But even here, Vrikasura ends up putting his own hand on his head and ends up getting burnt. So this was an example that is quoted of how sometimes, the boon gets granted without knowing what the implications of that boon will be, and it ends up coming and hurting. So Bhadram te shakuneya, Brahmasi kimadhuna tvam pishachasya vacha, Sandehash chen maduktau, Tava kimu na Karosh yangulim, one word, Karosh yangulim anga maulau. Bhadram te shakuneya, Brahmasi kimadhuna tvam pishachasya vacha, Sandehaschain maduktau, Tava kimuna karosh yangulim anga maulau.
Bhadram te shakuneya, Brahmasi kimadhuna tvam pishachasya vacha, Sandehaschain Tava kimuna kroshyanguli mangamaulau.
And the second line, Prabha, Karosh yangulim.
Karosh, okay. Bhadram te shakuneya, Brahmasi kimadhuna tvam pishachasya vacha, Sandehaschain madhuktau, Tava kimuna kroshyanguli. Karosh.
Yeah.
Karoshyanguli mangamaulau.
Bhadram te shakuneya Brahmasi kimadhuna tvam pishachasya vacha Sandehaschain maduktau Tava kimuna karoshyangulim angamaulau. Bhadram te shakuneya Brahmasi kimadhuna tvam pishachasya vacha Sandehaschain maduktau Tava kimu na karoshyangulim angamaulau.
Now, on your second line, last word, you're saying Karosh yangulim. It's Karosh yangulim.
Karoshyangulim, okay.
Yeah. Itham tvad vakya mudaha, Shirasi krita karaha, putta is krita karas, sopatach chinnapatam, Bramsho hevam paropasi turapi, that's one word, paropasi turapi cha gatihi, shulinopi tvameva. Itham twadvakya mudaha, Shirasi kritakara sopata chinnapatam, Bramsho hevam paropasi turapi cha gatihi, shulinopi tvameva.
Ittam tvad vakyamudaha, Shirasi kritakarasopatascinnapatam, Bramsho hevam paropasi turapi cha gatihi, shulinopi tvameva. Ittam tvad vakyamudaha, Shirasi kritakarasopatascinnapatam, Bramsho hevam paropasi turapi cha gatihi, shulinopi tvameva.
Ittam twadvakyamuraha Shirasi kritakaras sopata chinnapatam Bramsho hevam paropasiturapi chagatihi shulinopi tvameva. Ittam twadvakyamuraha Shirasi kritakaras sopatachinnapatam Bramsho hyevam paropasiturapi chagatihi shulinopi tvameva.
Third line after mudaha, there is a comma. Okay? third line. Stanza 7. Tune changes. Bhrigum kila saraswati nikatavasinastapasaha trimurtishu samadishan sattvatam veditum ayam punaranadarat udita ruddha roshe vidho hari pichajihim sishau girijaya dhrite twamagat. The Brikasura story is over. Second thing starts. So once a group of sages were performing some sacrifices on the bank of Saraswati river. So there was a discussion that arose amongst them that among the Trimurtis, who has gotten the most sattvic gunam, right? So which means the one who's very tolerant and is always equanimate, in any situation is always behaves the same. So who is that? And there was a conversation that's happened. So Bhrigu, who is also one of the putras of Brahma. So Bhrigu is then said, okay, Bhrigu, because you are such a big sage, as a son of Brahma, you go, because you have access to all of the Trimurtis. So you go test, right? Which Trimurti is the most sattvic, right? So, and the offense can be made, manas, vak, or action, karma. You can do it through any of these means. You can, hurt somebody, right? So first, this Bhrigu goes to Brahma. So Brahma is his own father, right? So when he goes to Brahma, then, the expectation is when you're going to meet Brahma is you bow down to him, or then you glorify him with prayers, which Bhrigu does not do. So when that happens, Brahma gets a small amount of anger at Bhrigu because Bhrigu is not respecting him. So however, Brahma is able to control his anger, and he's able, because of his intelligence, he controls it. So however, the offense that Bhrigu did with Brahma was with his mind, because he did not respect Brahma. So with his mind, he committed an offense towards Brahma, and Brahma got angry. So then Bhrigu goes to Shiva. So then when he goes to Shiva, Shiva is with Parvati. Shiva actually, because Shiva also, remember, he came from the Bhruvor Madhya of Brahma, right? So Bhrigu is kind of like at the same level as Lord Shiva, right? So Shiva then gets up to welcome Bhrigu. So at that time with Shiva, Bhrigu is through speech, right? So he goes and says all bad things about Shiva, right? So he says, oh, you are, like we saw what Prakasura was, or what happened in the last stanza. He goes and says all bad things, curses Shiva and everything. So at that time, Shiva also gets angry. However, Parvati subdues Shiva, saying, it's Bhrigu at the end of the day, so don't do anything, right? So that's what happens at the end of this stanza. So Bhrigum kila Saraswati, long E, Nikata Vasinas Tapasaha, put a visarga and comma there. Next line, the is goes away. Trimurtishu Samadishan Adika. Samadishan Adika, but it becomes double na there. So Samadishan Adika Sattvatam Veditum. Bhrigum kila Saraswati Nikatavasinastapasaha Trimurtishu Samadishan Adika Sattvatam Veditum.
Bhrigum kila saraswati nikatavasinastapasaha trimurtishu samadhishannadhika sattvatam veditum. Bhrigum kila saraswati nikatavasinastapasaha trimurtishu samadhishannadhika sattvatam veditum.
Bhrigum kila saraswati nikatavasinastapasaha trimurtishu samadishan adhika sattvatam veditum. Bhrigum kila saraswati nikatavasinastapasaha trimurtishu samadishan adhika sattvatam veditum.
I am. So the next word, I'll break it into a few multiple parts there. I am Kunar Anadarat. Anadarat. Okay. So Adaram is to do a respect. Anadarat is to not pay any respect, right? So I am Punar Anadarat Udita Ruddha Roshe Vidhau, comma Hare Picha Jihim Sishau Girijaya Dhrite Twamagat. Ayam punaranadharadudita ruddharoshe vidhau hare pichajihim sishau girijaya dhrite twamagat.
Ayam
Anadharat.
अयं पुनरनादराद् उदितरुद्धरोषे विधौ हरेऽपि च जिहिंसिषौ गिरिजया धृते त्वमागात्
Vamagat.
अयं पुनरनादराद् उदितरुद्धरोषे विधौ हरेऽपि च जिहिंसिषौ गिरिजाय धृते त्वामगात्
Girijaya dhrite.
गिरिजया धृते त्वामगात्
अयं पुनरनादरात् उदितो रुद्धरोषे विदौ हरेऽपि च जिहिंसिषौ गिरिजया धृते त्वामगात् अयं पुनरनादरात् उदितरुद्धरोषे विदौ हरेऽपि च जिहिंसिषौ गिरिजया धृते त्वामगात्.
We'll switch halfway. Sundari, you can be student. Tulsi, you can be student. Stanza 8. Suktam ramanka bhuvi pankajalocanam tvam vipre vinignati padena mudoti tastvam sarvam kshamasva munivarya bhavet sadame tvatpada chinnamiha bhushanamityavadihi. So then he comes to, so Brahma, he kind of insulted with his mind. Shiva, he insulted with his speech. So next he comes to this Karna Vaikuntham, where Narayana is lying down on Lakshmi Devi's lap on the Adishesha, and has his eyes closed. So Bhrigu now comes, and then he now does with action. So he comes and kicks Narayana in his chest to wake him up. So when he kicks Narayana in his chest, so at the time the Lord then wakes up, right? And then he realizes that the sage is standing in front of him. And because Bhrigu is, like I said, it's a big sage, so Narayana welcomes Bhrigu and he apologizes, saying that, accidentally I had my eyes closed. I didn't realize that you had actually come here. So it is my mistake. And then he actually, instead of shouting at him or anything, he then apologizes, saying, may I please look at your feet, because you kicked so hard at my chest, right? I want to see if your feet has been hurt. So with that, the Lord actually picks up Bhrigu's feet to see if there is anything has happened to Bhrigu's feet. And then he says, the mark that you have actually kicked me as a devotee of me, that's going to become my bhushanam. It's going to become the chinnam. It's going to become the mark that I'm actually going to wear as an ornament on my chest. So that then becomes the Srivatsa mark of Lord Narayana, that the chest while Bhrigu kicks Lord Narayana, right? So that's what, like, we always seen in everything, like the Lord has always said, in every thing, that the devotee, I am Bhakta Dhasam, I am always a servant of my devotees, right? And this was another example where he said, my devotees can kick me, can curse me, can do anything they want, and that's okay. So he says, you kicking on me is a respect to me, and this will always remain in my chest as a mark of respect for people to realize that it was given to me by my disciple. So when that happens, and Bhrigu realizes that Lord Narayana is a pure sattva guna, absolutely there's no instance of anger, then he comes back, and that comes in the next answer. So I'll hold off on that. So that's what happens here. So Suktam Ramanka Bhuvi Pankaja Lochanam Tvam, Vipre Vinignati Padena Mudoti Tas Tvam Sarvam Kshamaswa Munivarya Bhavet Sadame Tvatpada Chinnamiha Bhushanam Ityavadihi. Suptam Ramanka Bhuvi Pankajalocanam Tvam Vipre Vinignati Padena Mudoti Tastvam Sarvam Kshamaswa Munivarya Bhavet Sadame Tvatpada Chinnamiha Bhushanam Ityavadihi.
सुप्तं रमाङ्क भुवि पङ्कजलोचनं त्वां विप्रे विनिघ्नति पदेन मुदितोत्थितस्त्वम्. I think I lost my tune. Rajesh, sorry.
Padena Mudotitastvam.
मुदोत्थितस्त्वम्. सर्वं क्षमस्व मुनिवर्य भवेत् सदा मे त्वत्पादचिह्नम् इह भूषणम् इत्यवादीः. सुप्तं रमाङ्क भुवि पङ्कजलोचनं त्वां विप्रे विनिघ्नति पदेन मुदोत्थितस्त्वं सर्वं क्षमस्व मुनिवर्य भवेत् सदा मे त्वत्पादचिह्नम् इह भूषणम् इत्यवादीः
सुप्तं रमाङ्कभुवि पङ्कजलोचनं त्वां विप्रे विनिघ्नति पदेन मुदोत्थितस्त्वं सर्वं क्षमस्व मुनिवर्य भवेत् सदा मे त्वत्पादचिह्नमिह भूषणमित्यवादीः सुप्तं रमाङ्कभुवि पङ्कजलोचनं त्वां विप्रे विनिघ्नति पदेन मुदोत्थितस्त्वं सर्वं क्षमस्व मुनिवर्य भवेत् सदा मे त्वत्पादचिह्नमिह भूषणमित्यवादीः.
That's a 9. निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवराधदिरे विमोक्षं त्वामेवमच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्पोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः. So when Bhrigu comes back and then he narrates the story to the rishis who are there on the banks of Saraswati, and then they all conclude with certainty that Narayana is pure sattvic gunam, and and that's the reason he's the supreme lord and all that. So they kind of come to that conclusion. So Bhattacharya says to that you who is free from any, who has no shortcomings or anything that goes wrong, vayam bhajamaha. Our prayers to you, we are praying to or worshipping you, one who's like that. निश्चित्य ते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्ध भावाः सारस्वता मुनिवरा धदिरे विमोक्षं त्वाम एवं अच्युत 3 words there त्वाम एवं अच्युत पुनश्च्युति दोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैक, let's say it as one word, सत्वोच्चयैक तनुमेव वयं भजामः. निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवराधदिरे विमोक्षं त्वामेवमच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः.
निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवरादधिरे विमोक्षं त्वामेवमच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः. निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवरादधिरे विमोक्षं त्वामेवमच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः.
निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवरादधिरे विमोक्षं त्वामेवमच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः. निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवरादधिरे विमोक्षं त्वामेवमच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः.
That's a 10. Different tune here. जगत्सृष्ट्यादौ त्वां निगमनिवहैर्वन्धिभिरिव सुतं विष्णो सच्चित् परमरसनिर्द्वैतवपुषं परात्मानं भूमन् पशुपवनिता भाग्यनिवहं परितापश्रान्त्यै पवनपुरवासिन् परिभजे. Says, O Vishnu, the one who pervades everywhere, Pavanapuravasin, O Lord of Guruvayur, you are at the very beginning of creation. The Vedas came only to praise you as Purusha. So they were praising you, just like how everybody else is singing in the courts of the king, praising the kings. The Vedas were born to praise you. So you who is Satchit Parama, one who is supreme bliss consciousness, who is Advaita Vapusham, who is the non-dual existence of you, who is the supreme being, who is Pashupa Vanita Bhagya Nivaham. So who is, you take the punyam of all the gopikas of the Pashupa Vanita, all the women of the cowherds, which is the gopikas, you take all of their punyam and then you give a form to it. That form is you. So that you, who is also the Lord of Guruvayur, please eradicate all of my sorrows. Jagat Srishtyadau Tvam Nigama Nivahair Vandi Bhiriva, Stutam Vishnu Satchit Parama Rasa Nirdvaita Vapusham Paratmanam Bhuman Pashupa Vanita Bhagya Nivaham, Paritapa Shrantyai Pavanapuravasin Paribhaje. Jagat Srishtyadau Tvam Nigama Nivahair Bhiriva Sutam Vishnu Satchit Paramarasa Nirdvaita Vapusham Paratmanam Bhuman Pashupa Vanita Bhagya Nivaham Paritapashrantyai Pavanapuravasin Paribhaje.
Jagat Srushtyaadau Tvam Nigamanivahair Stutam Vishno Satchit Paramarasa Nidvaita Vapusham Paratmanam Bhuman Pashupavanita Bhagya Nivaham Paritapashrantyai Pavanapuravasin Paribhaje. Jagat Srushtyaadau Tvam Nigamanivahair Stutam Vishno Satchit Paramarasa Nidvaita Vapusham Paratmanam Bhuman Pashupavanita Bhagya Nivaham Paritapashrantyai Pavanapuravasin Paribhaje.
जगत्सृष्ट्यादौ त्वां निगमनि वहैर्वन्दिभिरिव स्तुतं विष्णो सच्चित्परम रसनिर्द्वैतवपुषं परात्मानं भूमन् पशुपवनिता भाग्यनिवहं परीताप्रश्रान्त्यै पवनपुरवासिन् परिभजे. जगत्सृष्ट्यादौ त्वां निगमनिवहैर्वन्दिभिरिव स्तुतं विष्णो सच्चित्परमरस निर्द्वैतवपुषं परात्मानं भूमन् पशुपवनिता भाग्यनिवहं परीताप्रश्रान्त्यै पवनपुरवासिन् परिभजे.
Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. I'll do a few stanzas of 90. It's Agamadinam Parama Tatparya Nirupanam. So like I said, Narayaneeyam, there are three portions to it. One of them is all the leelais of the lords, including avataram and everything. That's one part. Then there's a second, which is all the great devotees, including this chapter in 89 is about Bhrigu, about devotees. That's second. And the third is all the philosophical stuff, right? So now from 90, we have 6 more chapters, Dasakams left for us to finish 100. We're at 94 right now, 6 more left. So all of these remaining ones are all philosophical stuff, right? So which is talking about, it talks about karma yoga, it talks about all the other different kinds of things. So some of these I'll condense. Today we'll just do 3 stanzas, 3-4 stanzas maybe without meaning. Stanza 1. Vrika Bhrigu Muni Mohin Yambarishadi. So this is 2 words, Mohini Ambarisha, 2 words there, okay? So Mohin Yambarishadi Vritteshu, short, put a shu at the end of that line. Short u, Vritteshu, comma. Next line, the ish and va go away if you have that. Ai tavahi mahatvam sarva sharvadi jaitram. Vrikabhrugumuni mohin yambarishadi vritteshu. Ai tavahi mahatvam sarva sharvadi jaitram.
Vrukabhrugumuni mohinyambarishadivrutteshu aitavahi mahatvam sarvasharvadijaitram. Vrukabhrugumuni mohinyambarishadivrutteshu aitavahi mahatvam sarvasharvadijaitram.
वृकभृगुमुनि मोहिन्यम्बरीशादिवृत्तेषु अयितवहि महत्त्वं सर्वशर्वादिचैत्रम्. वृकभृगुमुनि मोहिन्यम्बरीशादिवृत्तेषु अयितवहि महत्त्वं सर्वशर्वादिचैत्रम्.
Titamiha Paramatman Nishkalar Vagha, the ear sound comes after the la. Nishkalar Vagha Bhinnam किमपि यदवभातं तद्धि रूपं तवैव स्थितमिह परमात्मन् निष्कलार्वागभिन्नं किमपि यदवभातं तद्धि रूपं तवैव
स्थितमिह परमात्मन् निष्कलार्वागभिन्नं किमपि यदवभातं तद्धि रूपं तवैव स्थितमिह परमात्मन् निष्कलार्वागभिन्नं किमपि यदवभातं तद्धि रूपं तवैव. Is there a comma before kimapi?
Yeah, after the end of that line, vaga bhinnam, there is a comma, end of that line.
Okay.
स्थितमिह परमात्मन् निष्कलार्वगभिन्नं किमपि यदवभातं तद्धि रूपं तवैव
Tulsi,
स्थितमि-
third line, last word, vaga bhinnam.
Sure. स्थितमिह परमात्मन् निष्कलार्वागभिन्नं किमपि यदवभातं तद्धि रूपं तवैव
Murti Trayeshwara Sadashiva Panchakam Yat, comma, Prahuhu, put F, Prahu Paratma Vapureva Sadashivosmin. So this is a different tune compared to the first one, so just make a note there. मूर्तित्रयेश्वर सदाशिव पंचकं यत् प्राहुः परात्मवपुरेव सदाशिवोऽस्मिन्
मूर्तित्रयेश्वर सदाशिव पंचकं यत् प्राहुः परात्मवपुरेव सदाशिवोऽस्मिन् मूर्तित्रयेश्वर सदाशिव पंचकं यत् प्राहुः परात्मवपुरेव सदाशिवोऽस्मिन्.
मूर्तित्रयेश्वर सदाशिव पंचकं यत् प्राहुः परात्मवपुरेव सदाशिवोऽस्मिन् मूर्तित्रयेश्वर सदाशिव पंचकं यत् प्राहुः परात्मवपुरेव सदाशिवोऽस्मिन्.
Just do it as 4 lines, otherwise it's tune, you will not get it. Tatreshwarastu sa vikuntha padastvameva, comma, tritvam punar bhajasi satyapade tribhage. Tatreshwarastu sa vikuntha padastvameva tritvam punar bhajasi satyapade tribhage.
तत्रेश्वरस्तु स विकुण्ठपदस्त्वमेव त्रित्वं पुनर्भजसि सत्यपदे त्रिभागे तत्रेश्वरस्तु स विकुण्ठपदस्त्वमेव त्रित्वं पुनर्भजसि सत्यपदे त्रिभागे.
तत्रेश्वरस्तु स विकुण्ठपदस्त्वमेव त्रित्वं पुनर्भजसि सत्यपदे त्रिभागे तत्रेश्वरस्तु स विकुण्ठपदस्त्वमेव त्रित्वं पुनर्भजसि सत्यपदे त्रिभागे
तत्रापि सात्विक तनुं तव विष्णुमाहुः, कॉमा, धाता तु सत्व विरलो रजसैव पूर्णः सत्वोत्कटत्वमपि चास्ति तमो विकार, and then put a plus, चेष्टादिकञ्च, in sound, चेष्टादिकञ्च तव शंकर नाम्नि मूर्तौ तत्रापि सात्विकतनुं तव विष्णुमाहुः धाता तु सत्त्वविरलो रजसैव पूर्णः सत्वोत्कटत्वमपि चास्ति तमो विकारचेष्टादिकञ्च तव शङ्करनाम्नि मूर्तौ
तत्रापि सात्विकतनुं तव विष्णुमाहुः धाता तु सत्त्वविरलो रजसैव पूर्णः सत्वोत्कटत्वमपि चास्ति तमो विकार चेष्टादिकञ्च तव शङ्करनाम्नि मूर्तौ तत्रापि सात्विकतनुं तव विष्णुमाहुः धाता तु सत्त्वविरलो रजसैव पूर्णः सत्त्वोत्कटत्वमपि चास्ति तमो विकार चेष्टादिकं च तव शङ्कर नाम्नि मूर्तौ
I'm not able to unmute.
No, sorry, I got double muted. तत्रापि सात्विकतनुं तव विष्णुमाहुः धाता तु विरलो रजसैव पूर्णः सत्त्वोत्कटत्वमपि चास्ति तमो विकारचेष्टादिकं च तव शङ्कर नाम्नि मूर्तौ तत्रापि सात्विकतनुं तव विष्णुमाहुः धाता तु सत्त्वविरलो रजसैव पूर्णः सत्त्वोत्कटत्वमपि चास्ति तमो विकार चेष्टादिकं च तव शङ्कर नाम्नि मूर्तौ
Tam cha trimurtyatigatam. Trimurti atigatam, 2 words there. Trimurtyatigatam parapurusham tvam, comma. Sharvatmanapi khalu sarva mayatva hetoho. Shamsantyupasana vidau tadapi swatastu, comma. Twadrupam ityati dhridam bahu naha. Put a F, put a F, bahu naf pramanam. तं च त्रिमूर्त्यतिगतं परपूरुषं त्वां सर्वात्मनापि खलु सर्वमयत्वहेतोः शंसन्त्युपासनविधौ तदपि स्वतस्तु त्वद्रूपमित्यति दृढं बहुनः प्रमाणम्
तं च त्रिमूर्त्यतिगतं परपूरुषं त्वां सर्वात्मनापि खलु सर्वमयत्वहेतोः शंसन्त्युपासनविधौ तदपि स्वतस्तु त्वद्रूपमित्यति दृढं बहुनः प्रमाणम् तं च त्रिमूर्त्यतिगतं परपूरुषं त्वां सर्वात्मनापि खलु सर्वमयत्वहेतोः शंसन्त्युपासनविधौ तदपि स्वतस्तु त्वद्रूपमित्यति दृढं बहुनः प्रमाणम्
तं च त्रिमूर्त्यतिगतं परपूरुषं त्वां सर्वात्मानपि खलु सर्वमयत्वहेतोः शंसन्त्युपासनविधौ तदपि स्वतस्तु त्वद्रूपमित्यति दृढं बहुनः प्रमाणम् तं च त्रिमूर्त्यतिगतं परपूरुषं त्वां सर्वात्मानपि खलु सर्वात्मनापि खलु सर्वमयत्वहेतोः शंसन्त्युपासनविधौ तदपि स्वतस्तु त्वद्रूपमित्यति दृढं बहुनः प्रमाणम्.
Do 2 more and we'll stop today. Shri Shankaropi Bhagavan Sakaleshu Tavat, comma, Twameva Manayati Yo Nahi Pakshapati, comma, Twanishtameva Sahi Nama Sahasrakadi, short E, and then put a plus, Vyakyat Bhavat Stuti Parascha Gatim Gatonte. So last 2 lines together. Some books have vyakhyat in the 4th line first word. If you have vyakhyat, change it to vyakyat, 4th line first word. Shri Shankaropi Bhagavan Sakaleshu Tavat Twameva Manayati Yo Nahi Pakshapati Twanishtameva Sahinama Sahasrakadi Vyakyat Bhavat Stuti Parascha Gatim Gatonte. Sundari, mute little kid. Go ahead, Tulsi. I think she's on mute.
Oh, you want me to go ahead, Rajeshji?
Yeah, I think she's still on mute, so go ahead. Yeah.
Shri
Oh, sorry.
Shankaro.
Yes. Oh, sorry. श्रीशङ्करोऽपि भगवान् सकलेषु तावत् त्वामेव मानयति यो न हि पक्षपाती त्वन्निष्ठमेव स हि नाम सहस्रकादि व्याख्यद्भवत्स्तुतिपरश्च गतिं गतोऽन्ते श्रीशङ्करोऽपि भगवान् सकलेषु तावत् त्वामेव मानयति यो न हि पक्षपाती त्वन्निष्ठमेव स हि नाम सहस्रकादि व्याख्यद्भवत्स्तुतिपरश्च गतिं गतोऽन्ते.
Third and fourth are together. So it's Nama Sahasrakadi Vyakyat. So just you can say it together, okay?
त्वन्निष्ठमेव स हि नाम सहस्रकादि व्याख्यत्.
Yeah.
Okay.
श्रीशङ्करोऽपि भगवान् सकलेषु तावत् त्वामेव मानयति यो न हि पक्षपाती त्वन्निष्ठमेव स हि नाम सहस्रकारी व्याख्यद्भवत्सु स्तुति परश्च गतिं गतोऽन्ते श्रीशङ्करोऽपि भगवान् सकलेषु तावत् त्वामेव मानयति यो न हि पक्षपाती त्वन्निष्ठमेव स हि नाम सहस्रकारी व्याख्यद्भवत्स्तुति परश्च गतिं गतोऽन्ते
Last one. Murti Trayagati Trayati Gamuvacha. Trayati Gamuvacha Cha Mantra Shastra and then put a plus Syadau Kalaya Sushamam Sakaleshwaram Twam. So first two lines together. Dhyanam Cha Nishkalamasau Pranave Kaluktva, comma Twameva Tatra Sakalam Nijagada Nanyam. Murtitrayati gamuvacha cha mantra shastrasya kalaya sushamam sakaleshwaram tvam dhyanam cha nishkalamasau pranave khaluktva tvameva tatra sakalam nijagadananyam.
मूर्तित्रयातिगमुवाच च मूर्तित्रयातिगमुवाच च मूर्तित्रयातिगमुवाच च मन्त्रशास्त्रस्यादौ कलाय सुषमं सकलेश्वरं त्वां ध्यानं च निष्कलमसौ प्रणवे खलु त्वामेव तत्र सकलं निजगाद नान्यम् मूर्तित्रयातिगमुवाच च मन्त्रशास्त्रस्यादौ कलाय सुषमं सकलेश्वरं त्वां ध्यानं च निष्कलमसौ प्रणवे खलु त्वामेव तत्र सकलं निजगाद नान्यम्.
मूर्तित्रयातिगमुवाच मूर्तित्रयातिगमुवाच मन्त्रशास्त्रस्यादौ कलाया सुषमं सकलेश्वरं त्वां ध्यानं च निष्कलमसौ प्रणवे खलु त्वामेव तत्र सकलं निजगादनान्यम्.
So the first line gamuvacha cha mantra shastra. There's a cha in between.
Sure. मूर्तित्रयाति गमुवाच च. Am I saying double?
Yeah, you're saying it correct. There's gamuvacha cha mantra. So two chas coming there.
मूर्तित्रयाति गमुवाच च मन्त्रशास्त्रस्यादौ कलाय सुषमं सकलेश्वरं त्वां ध्यानं च निष्कलमसौ प्रणवे खलु त्वामेव तत्र सकलं निजगादनान्यम्.
Shivaya Parabrahmane Namaha. We'll stop here today. Santhanandhavabodhatmakamanupamitam kaladeshavadibhyam nirmuktam nityamuktam nigamashatasahasrena nirbhasyamanam aspashtam drishtamatre punarurpurusharthatmakam brahmatattvam tattavadbhati sakshat gurupavanapure hanta bhagyam jananam कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Rajesh. Bye.
Rajesh.
Thank you, Rajeshri.
Bye.
Mm.